Every now and then, I get a request by one of my subscribers to do a video on a story that they've heard about. This video is one such video suggested to me by a subscriber by the name of Barscope Gaming. Thanks for the request, Barscope Gaming, and big up yourself. This is a story about a man called Rupert who ended up doing the unthinkable when he flew into a jealous rage after his former partner had moved on. This is a tragic story of the murder of 36-year-old Vivian Aston. The White Swan pub in Aston, Birmingham. On November the 13th, 1980, after being under police surveillance for weeks, the White Swan pub was raided by police and 8 arrests were made. One of those arrests were of a 21-year-old man called Keith Moraine, who was arrested and charged for possession of cannabis. Keith Moraine had been caught with what police described as a large quantity of weed on him, which he said he had brought for £2 off a man in the car park. When police went into the car park, they found 43-year-old Rupert da Costa sitting in his car, and upon searching the vehicle, they found an undisclosed amount of cannabis in his possession. Both the men were one of the 8 men arrested in the pub that day and charged with possession. At their court appearance 2 months later, in January 1981, they were both fined £50 and ordered to pay £10 court costs. But that was not a deterrent for Rupert da Costa, because 4 years later, in the summer of 1986, he was arrested, and this time he was jailed for his drug offences. Rupert da Costa, now aged 49 at the time, had a partner, 36-year-old Vivian Aston, who by then he'd been with for 14 years. And they had a daughter together, a 12-year-old girl called Emma. Vivian also had another daughter, a 15-year-old girl called Corinne, who she had with a previous partner, and they'd all lived together on Wedgwood Drive in Handsworth for many years. But that summer of 1986, whilst Rupert was in prison, Vivian had written a letter to Rupert telling him that the relationship was over and to stay away from her. Rupert had written back to Vivian from prison and had phoned her multiple times, begging Vivian to take him back. But Vivian's mind had already been made up. Vivian Aston had decided to move on with her life without Rupert after he'd been imprisoned for drug offences. And she then rekindled the flame again with an old love, a Mr. Levi Knight. Levi Knight was the owner of Monte Carlo, a nightclub on Soho Road in Handsworth, Birmingham. Levi Knight was also Rupert's previous manager. Also, whilst Rupert was in prison, Vivian had packed up all his belongings and had them moved to an address on Putney Road in Handsworth, just a 3-minute drive away, or a 15-minute walk. Rupert was released from prison for the drug offences on the 10th of September 1986, the day after Vivian's 36th birthday, and was said to be angry at hearing of Vivian's new relationship and at being a jilted lover. Almost a month later, on Saturday the 4th of October, Rupert went out to 2 blues parties where he claimed that as the night went on, he started to miss Vivian as they used to go out together. He claimed that he wanted to put everything right by begging her to take him back, so he decided to go to her house. On Sunday the 5th of October 1986, at approximately 5 a.m. in the morning, Rupert reached Vivian's home on Wedgwood Drive in Handsworth, Birmingham. Vivian had been asleep in bed with Monte Carlo club owner Levi Knight, and Rupert claims that when he drove up to Vivian's house, he saw his ex-manager and club owner Levi Knight's van outside her home and flew into a rage, claiming that the sight of Levi's van outside his ex-partner's home was the last thing he remembered. He said he knew who the van belonged to and he was shocked and hurt. Vivian had promised him she'd never take another man to their home while his 2 daughters were there. He said that after this, everything went black. Rupert DaCosta then began to attack Vivian's front door with an axe. The commotion of the axe battering the front door woke everybody up in the house, and Vivian knew straight away that it was Rupert. In panic and desperation, Vivian made a desperate call to 999 using her bedside telephone and telling the emergency services what was going on. Unable to break the door down with the axe, Rupert then used the axe to smash the kitchen window where he climbed in. Rupert said that he saw Vivian standing naked on the landing. Rupert then saw a half-naked Levi Knight, his former manager and owner of Monte Carlo Nightclub, and chased him with the axe. Mr. Levi Knight ran out of the house half-naked and jumped into his van and tried to drive off. Rupert, who was hot on his tail, chased Levi to his van, and as Levi fled the scene, Rupert brought his axe down onto the van and began attacking the van with his axe, but Levi managed to escape. Still enraged, Rupert then made his way back into the home and into the bedroom. By then, the police had started to arrive. When the police arrived into the house, they saw Vivian sat on the floor with Rupert standing over her with the axe raised. As police tried to stop Rupert from attacking Vivian, he threatened them with the axe and slammed the bedroom door shut and began his attack. Rupert then barricaded himself and Vivian in the bedroom using furniture to prevent the police from entering. The police tried desperately to open the bedroom door to help save Vivian, who they said was screaming at the top of her voice, but they could only open the bedroom door 12 inches and were beaten back by Rupert, who began wielding his axe at them. Hearing Vivian's continued screams that were getting more and more desperate, police attempted to rescue Vivian. Police's attempts to rescue Vivian got even more urgent. PC John Turley and the other police that were with him attempted to push a mattress into the 12-inch gap to both help prise the bedroom door open and to use the mattress as a shield. But upon seeing this rescue attempt, Rupert began hitting at the mattress and the police officers with the axe, and they were unable to get the door open. Rupert then slammed the bedroom door shut and locked it, and continued his axe attack of Vivian, whilst police officers listened helplessly outside the bedroom door. Police officers heard Rupert shouting something to Vivian, but Vivian's screams were so loud that police couldn't work out what he was saying to her. The police said that all they could do was listen to the terrified screams of a dying woman and a series of what they described as dull thuds, and then it went silent. After a few moments of silence, the bedroom door opened slightly and Rupert DaCosta said to the police, "I have nothing against you." The police ordered Rupert to put down his axe, which he did. He then put both hands outside of the bedroom door, where he was pulled out and handcuffed to the stairs banister. Upon entering the bedroom, PC Vincent Ferguson said that he saw blood all over one wall, and the blood was also splattered over a small cabinet. Vivian was lying naked behind the bedroom door, with a deep wound across her mouth, and one side of her head covered in blood. The blood-stained axe lay next to her body. Rupert DaCosta was arrested and taken to the police station, whilst Vivian, who had been pronounced dead, was taken to the morgue, where she was autopsied by Home Office pathologist Dr. Peter Ackland. Upon examination of the body, the pathologist said that he found 20 axe wounds on her skull, neck and upper body. Vivian had virtually been decapitated, as the pathologist said that Vivian's head was only still attached to her body by a piece of skin tissue, leaving her head partially severed. Vivian's skull was also fractured in multiple places. She had severe injuries to her head and body. Rupert da Costa denied murder, claiming that it was manslaughter instead, as he was provoked by her ending the relationship. On the 20th of March 1987, at his first court appearance, he was remanded into custody to await trial. Rupert's 5-day trial began in June of 1987 at Birmingham Crown Court. In court, Rupert da Costa cried on the stand as he told the court that he had no memory of hacking Vivian to death. Through his tears, Rupert told the court of how he only went to Vivian's house to beg her back, at which point Mr. Anthony Palmer, the prosecuting QC, asked him if that was the point he had decided to kill Vivian. Rupert replied, "It is the last thing that would have entered my mind." On Monday the 22nd of June 1987, the jury of 2 men and 10 women rejected his claim of manslaughter and found Rupert da Costa guilty of murder. Rupert da Costa was jailed for life. Now, according to my subscriber who gave me this story, Barscope Gaming, when Rupert da Costa was eventually released from prison, which I'm assuming would have been after around 25 years inside, so possibly around the early 2000s, Rupert da Costa was given a job as a butcher in a well-known Birmingham Caribbean restaurant on Lascelles Road. If alive today, he'd be 87 years old. Less than a mile down the road from where Vivian Aston was murdered in her home by Rupert da Costa, a 4-minute drive or a 19-minute walk, in the same B20 postcode of Handsworth, Birmingham, at 11 Crampton Road, and 25 years earlier in 1961, a room was rented by a 31-year-old labourer by the name of Rupert. Rupert Jerome Morrison had rented a room from a Mr. and Mrs. Pedro at 11 Crampton Road in Handsworth, and Rupert had come over from Jamaica to settle down in England. His landlords, Mr. and Mrs. Pedro, had a 30-year-old cousin by the name of Hazel May Dacris, who was known by everyone as Joyce. Hazel also had emigrated from Jamaica in August of 1960 and was also lodging at a room at 11 Crampton Road, Handsworth, in her cousin's house. At some point between August 1960, when Hazel first emigrated to England, and January 1961, Hazel and Rupert became close, and she moved into his room where they lived together as man and wife, although they weren't married. It's not clear why, but on Thursday the 5th of January in 1961, Hazel told Rupert that she didn't want him anymore and decided to move out of the room she shared with him and back into her own room, and she packed up her belongings and moved. That day, Rupert left for work as a labourer at 8 a.m, but returned on his lunch break at 1:30 p.m. to see if Hazel had changed her mind about moving out of the room with him, and to see whatever her decision was about moving back into his room. Hazel told him to wait until the evening when she would tell Rupert her final answer, and Rupert asked her if she had moved on with another man, to which Hazel replied that she had. She then walked into the kitchen where Rupert followed her. Rupert claims that Hazel then told him she had found a white man, at which point Rupert grabbed Hazel's wrists and Hazel pulled a knife out on him. In another version of events that Rupert gave to police, he claimed that he went into the kitchen where Hazel was cooking and asked her for something to eat. Rupert claimed that Hazel told him to f*** off and go about his business, at which point he told Hazel that she ought to be ashamed of herself for using such words. He then said Hazel picked up a knife. Rupert claimed that the two of them struggled for the knife, and during the struggle, Hazel may have been struck with it as they struggled. But according to the landlord, Mrs. Pedro, who was the landlady of the home and cousin to Hazel, she heard a scream and ran into the kitchen to find Hazel standing in the corner and Rupert with a knife in his hand stabbing her. Mrs. Pedro immediately ran out the house to call the police, and when the police arrived, Constables Goodwin and Constable Moore could not find either Hazel or Rupert in the home, but they found blood all over the kitchen. They then decided to check the back garden, where they found a blood-stained knife, and there, at the bottom of the garden, hidden behind a disused shed, was the mutilated body of 30-year-old Hazel Dacres. Upon searching the home, the police constables found the suit that Rupert had been wearing crumpled up on his bed. The suit was covered in blood. He had changed his clothes and then fled the house. An immediate manhunt was launched to try and find Rupert, and he was later caught and arrested at a house a mile away on Brougham Street in Lozells. It was the home of one of his friends. When Rupert had reached the home of that said friend, he had told the friend, "I must talk to you. Take me to the station. I have killed my girl." 30-year-old Hazel's body was taken to the morgue, where it was autopsied by a Dr. F.E.D. Griffiths. There he found 16 knife wounds to the body. A number of them were defensive wounds to the hands and wrists. Hazel's heart and right lung had also been penetrated by the knife, and her cause of death was determined to be shock and hemorrhaging. During a written statement at the police station, Rupert claimed that he had not meant to kill Hazel as he loved her, and that he had been giving her all his money and buying her gifts because he loved her very much. Rupert Jerome Morrison's one-day trial took place at a Birmingham court, where he was represented by barrister George Brown, and where he continued to deny murder, saying that the stab wounds were done accidentally, adding, "if I even caused them at all." Rupert told the courts that Hazel had promised to marry him, but by December 1960, she had changed her mind. She had later promised to come back to him. In his deliberations, the prosecutor, Mr. R.K. Brown, said, "It's as plain a case of murder as you will find anywhere. Rupert Morrison made a savage and cruel attack on Hazel with a knife, either through jealousy or because she had a change of heart about living with him." The jury deliberated for just half an hour before finding 31-year-old Rupert Morrison guilty of the murder of 30-year-old Hazel Dacres. And on Tuesday the 28th of March 1961, Judge Mr. Justice Pilcher sentenced Rupert to life in prison.